Jesus' first century world was just as polarized as ours, if not more so. Israel had been colonized by Rome and was suffering under a high tax load and very little freedom. There were multiple groups within first century Israel, kind of sects, but the two most common that we read about in the Gospels are the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Pharisees were more rural or small town, more conservative, and on one hand, devoted to God and to Scripture. On the other, they, if you know anything about them from reading Jesus' teachings and reading the Gospels, they had lost the heart posture of God, in particular God's heart of compassion and justice and love for those on the margins. The Sadducees, on the other hand, were the closest thing to progressives in Jesus' world, and it doesn't fit, that label doesn't fit, but it's the closest thing. They were far more urban, more upper class, more educated and sophisticated. They did not accept, this is fascinating, they did not accept most of the Bible as scripture, in particular nothing after the Torah, which means they did not believe in a whole range of kind of, at the time, Jewish doctrine. They did not believe in resurrection. They did not believe in life after death or angels or demons or any of that. And they were the minority, but they were the ones in power. They were the ones down in Jerusalem in charge of the temple and in particular of the cultural institutions of Israel. And they became powerful and rich due to compromise and complicity with Rome. And while the Pharisees and the Sadducees do not map right onto our political landscape of right and left, there are enough similarities to point one or two out. And what's fascinating is, one, Jesus does not fit into either category. He just does not. Two, the Pharisees and Sadducees hate each other. I mean, literally hate each other. But in the story, they come together to murder Jesus because they hate Jesus even more than they hate each other. As the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And while we are not living under Roman rule in first century Palestine, thank God, so we have to make an educated guess as to how Jesus would interact with a democracy like America. And that calls for humility, by the way. This is not like strict math, 1 + 1 = 2. It calls for imagination and opinion and interpretation, calls for humility. But as followers of Jesus, like Jesus, we do not fit into a political tribe. We may register as one party or another in order to vote, but we just do not fit into a category. Think about all that we are for, just what we're for, not even to start with what we're against, what we're for as followers of Jesus based on his teachings and the library that is the New Testament. We are for, first off, the whole world. God so loved, not just America, God so loved the world. We're for the whole country, not just a coastal city like Portland or wherever it is that we call home. We are for all economic groupings, not just the one that we are in, but we are especially for the poor. There's no way around that as followers of Jesus. We are for all ethnic groups, not just the majority one or the one that we identify with. We are for the immigrant and the refugee, whatever our policy opinion is, we are for that. We are for women, need that even be said, and the gift that you bring to the church and the world. We are for equal opportunity for all. We are for religious freedom for all. The way of Jesus is not coercive. Religious freedom, not just for Christians. We are for, that is a Christian idea. We are for anti-discrimination laws and dignity and human respect. And at the same time, we are for the sanctity of human sexuality and gender and marriage. We believe that we have just a way higher view of sex than most people in our country. We believe that sex is way more than just a biological release or a way to propagate the species or play for grown-ups. We believe it is the fusion of two souls. It is beautiful, and it is good, and it is powerful. And when it's used in intimacy and loyalty to form families where children grow up safe and happy and flourishing, and mom and dad are formed and forged into people not of narcissism, but of agape, when it's used that way, it is a powerful voice and force for good. When it is used for nothing more than narcissistic pleasure and biological release and self-gratification, it is a powerful force of destruction and dehumanization. We are for the unborn as we are living through the great genocide of our time, and most people are silent. We're also for the environment based on our founding story in Genesis, where the earth is God's creation, not ours. There is a creator, there is a creation, and we, the Imago Dei who live in between, are charged with its care. And in the Genesis story, we are held responsible as we have real legitimate agency for its future. We're also for nonviolence and enemy love and all of the implications of that. And we are still, in a weird way, for authority. We honor those in authority over us, even when we do not like them or they fall far short of Jesus' vision. We still live from a place of honor. The list goes on and on. Now, followers of Jesus across the political aisle disagree on the best way forward on a number of these issues. For example, let's take one like the poor, which is a very clear biblical theology that as followers of Jesus, we are for the poor. Democratic and socialist Christians think the best way to care for the poor is through government programming and wealth redistribution through higher taxes. Republican and libertarian Christians, of course this is all an oversimplification, but you get the point, think the best way to do this is through government deregulation and lower taxes to kind of create space for agency and entrepreneurship. And Anabaptists and apolitical Christians think the best way isn't through the government at all, but through the church as an alternative society where justice is done first to each other in a relational web of love as we care for one another, and those with extra give to those who have less of our own free will. Now, most centrists think it's kind of a combination of all three. Why do you have to pick one? And most who are more extreme think their way is the way. And of course, you're right. Of course, you're all right. But you know. Now, my point here is that followers of Jesus disagree on the how. Like, what's the best way to care for the poor? But we do not disagree on the what. If you disagree that you as a follower of Jesus have a personal responsibility, not just to pay your taxes, and not just to vote, but to actually care for the poor, then you're not a Christian. Or a more gracious way to say that is you've yet to discover what Jesus actually has to say about your life and your money and your future, right? We disagree on the how, but not on the what. My point is here, even if we agree, even if because if we have, this is our theory or this is our working whatever, with one particular party on A, B, and C, if we are faithful to Jesus, we will inevitably disagree on D, E, and F. Politically, we are homeless. We don't fit into a camp. We're not tribal. Why? Because it's very simple, exactly what Jesus said right before you. We belong to another king and another kingdom.